Back in 2015, a small startup convinced Elon Musk and other investors to part with a whopping $1 billion. To put this into perspective, the revolutionary Uber, which transformed the world by making it possible to find a driver with just a few clicks, initially secured around $1 million in funding. Airbnb, which opened up a whole new niche in the global tourism market, impressed investors enough to get a mere $600,000. So, while these groundbreaking ideas raised about $1 million each, the star of our video attracted a full $1 billion. What kind of startup is worth that much?
Scooters.
The one that claimed to be fighting for the greater good of all humankind, and they meant it, stating their mission was to advance technology to benefit humanity as a whole without even thinking about making a profit. The company was non-profit. This is how a group of American altruists convinced investors they needed $1 billion for the greater good. They even mentioned they would only use a small fraction of it, but something went wrong. A year later, they needed another $120,000, a drop in the bucket compared to their next round of funding. Another $1 billion. But the altruists weren't done yet and added another zero to the figure. Eventually, $10 billion went to the now famous company OpenAI, creators of the much-hyped ChatGPT. Of course, this was accompanied by wildly successful engineering and marketing projects. They showed the world what AI could do through Dota 2. First, they created a bot to play 1v1 matches, building up its story like a hero's journey from a movie. First, it trained to beat a noob, then an average player, and finally a real pro and a crowd favorite, the legendary Dendi. Then they repeated the hero's journey with a full team of bots for a 5v5 game. Despite the vastly increased complexity, the story ended with the OpenAI bots crushing professional esports players.
As the agent will fall, and that is GG, game over. OpenAI taking game 2.
And they secured that coveted second billion just 3 months after this stunning victory. Over time, their noble declarations about accessibility, liberty, and selfless knowledge sharing, let's just say they evolved and became a bit more commercialized. In 2019, the company launched a commercial division, and their earlier rhetoric of "we only need a tiny fraction of the money" shifted to "we'll need billions of dollars." That same year, Sam Altman, one of the initial investors in OpenAI, decided to leave his prestigious position as president of Silicon Valley's top startup accelerator. He took a leap of faith to become the head of a company that was both commercial and non-profit, with a vague mission and product, OpenAI. During his time at the accelerator, he'd seen countless high-profile, expensive projects, but he left it all for the seemingly abstract world of artificial intelligence. The wild success of this AI startup got the media so excited that the esteemed Wall Street Journal dropped a bombshell, claiming that Sam Altman was looking for ways to raise $7 trillion to expand microchip production. To give you an idea of how insane that number is, the entire market is valued at $527 billion. With that money, you could buy Apple and Microsoft. But to truly grasp the craziness of our world, $7 trillion is more than the combined economies of Italy, Canada, and Russia, which the subject of the article swiftly denied. So, there are two possibilities. Either they're all idiots and high on drugs, or you don't need to see robots marching outside your window to realize a technical revolution is happening. While we were having fun animating popular memes, asking Midjourney to place Harry Potter characters into different universes, and joking about how the great ChatGPT can't use a calculator, the world's serious players were busy discussing something called sovereignty. In a general sense, sovereignty means independence from external forces, and there are many types of sovereignty. For instance, if a country doesn't issue its own currency, it loses its economic sovereignty. If it relies on a single oil supplier, it loses its energy sovereignty. Can you guess which world leader talks about sovereignty the most?
Суверенитет. Суверенитеты. Суверенитет. Суверенитета. Суверенитет. Суверенитеты. Суверенитеты. Суверенитеты.
It's a flexible concept, but at its core it's about having resilience against external influences. That's why the focus of our story is on technological sovereignty. To show that I'm not making this up, here's what's being discussed in a European public policy journal. The headline reads EU AI sovereignty, and it bluntly states that there's a global race in artificial intelligence, making sovereignty in this field crucial. This is divided into two main areas. The first is military. Using AI itself can pose a threat due to vulnerabilities. If you're using software controlled from abroad, who knows what backdoors might be built in? Even if the software is your own, there's a risk it could be hacked. Moreover, neural networks are now being integrated into offensive weapons systems, and I'm sure I don't need to explain the advantage that drones and air defense systems can provide. The second is the economic impact, where the winner takes all. AI technologies are expected to deliver enormous economic advantages. If a country develops powerful technologies for automating production lines, optimizing logistics, operating self-driving cars, diagnosing diseases, developing medicines, or managing agriculture, these technologies can easily be exported abroad. Eventually, an entire country's market could be controlled by AI developed in a foreign state. And on top of that, it's claimed that companies use neural networks to collect and analyze user data, spread false information, and manipulate public opinion. Hold on, isn't this the same scare tactic we've been hearing for years and yet nothing's happened? Well, first of all, this isn't just the panic-driven fears of random people on the internet, it's the perspective of a reputable journal in the field of political science. And second, the target audience is different. This journal is sending a message to European elites, not anonymous internet users lounging on their couches. And the seriousness of the situation is always confirmed by one criterion: money. Talk is cheap, but if it's not backed by money, then it's just talk. This is where three nerds kick down the door of our story. They're asking for investment in their startup, and the kicker? The startup was founded just 4 weeks earlier. Three 30-somethings just got together, stated their intentions, and, without having any actual product, managed to raise $113 million. Let me guess, it's about artificial intelligence again. Exactly, and they didn't even propose anything new. At that time, OpenAI was already making waves with ChatGPT.
ChatGPT. ChatGPT.
ChatGPT.
And these guys based their entire marketing strategy on the idea that OpenAI isn't really that open. The data used by OpenAI to train the model is kept secret, implying that we rely on a machine that has unidentified sources and can produce uncontrollable outputs. Filtering efforts to address this issue are only a slim and breakable guarantee that the model will not output sensitive content on which it may have been trained. As of April 2023, this issue formed the basis of ChatGPT ban in Italy. We will distribute tools to leverage the power of these white box models and create a developer community around our trademark. This approach is an ideological differentiator from OpenAI. All major actors are currently US-based, and Europe is yet to see the appearance of a serious contender. This is a major geopolitical issue given the strength and dangers of this new technology. Mistral will become a European leader in productivity and creativity-enhancing AI and guide the new industrial revolution that is coming. So, it turns out that European elites are willing to pour millions into a European version of ChatGPT. All you have to do is say it won't be a black box, but rather an open-source code with a Made in the EU label. Interestingly, among the first investors was a state investment bank, and Mistral received support from none other than a former Secretary of State for Digital Affairs, a minister who served in Macron's government. Here's the situation. In the US, they've developed a model that magically responds to queries much like a human with expertise across various fields. But for users, it's essentially a black box. You can connect to it, ask it questions, get answers, but no one knows what's inside, what it was trained on, or if it gives the same responses to different groups. In response, the EU developed a similar tool but with open-source code, making the internal workings transparent. For the European Union, this seems like the only solution. And so, a new player enters the field, with the US being the first to take the lead. In this way, the creation of a sovereign model falls within the realm of geopolitics. And I think all the officials were just blown away by how ChatGPT has evolved. When a human being is born, their intelligence is not much more advanced than a potato's. Over time, however, they begin to understand the world through their senses, grasp cause and effect relationships, develop language and symbolic perception, and eventually logic and abstract thinking. The initial version of ChatGPT didn't stir much public interest. For instance, when asked a pressing question like, "How do I meet a girl?" the first version provided a real but extremely vague and simple suggestion.
Try talking to her. Say hello and ask questions.
The second version could handle longer texts. The third version considered context and provided more detailed responses. For example, it might suggest finding common interests. The fourth version is capable, if not of abstract thinking, then at least of situational modeling. It grasps the subtle nuances between confidence and pushiness. While following these recommendations verbatim might turn you into a creepy stalker, it's noteworthy how much the model has evolved. Check out the different responses on the screen, pause the video and take a look. What drove this development? Just as a human's intelligence develops through new neural connections and increased functionality after birth, linguistic models evolve through changes in their parameters. You probably suspected that artificial intelligence perceives objects differently than we do.
Goodbye, Mr. Anderson.
For instance, what we see as the letter T in binary code is this, and the researcher might look like this. If we want the text to be blue, we can add a blue encoding. What you see as text is represented in computer language like this. Remember how we discussed earlier in the episode about AI bots defeating esports players in Dota 2? While a regular person sees the screen like this, a soulless machine sees it like that. Essentially, any information about our surroundings can be represented in some form of encoding. In neural networks, these are called parameters, and it's a set of numbers as well. The model's task is to react to incoming information as accurately as possible. They adjust their focus according to the context, like how they would respond to the same question of how to meet a girl. To provide a simple and straightforward answer, the first version of the model had no more or less than 117 million parameters. The second version had 1.5 billion, the third 175 billion. And the official data for the fourth version is not available. However, you probably noticed that versions are assigned when the number of parameters increases by at least an order of magnitude. Based on estimates, the fourth version likely has over 1 trillion parameters. To upgrade from this to this, your model needs to be more complex by 4 orders of magnitude, or 10,000 times more. But what limits the creation of the ultimate intelligence that could do everything better than a human? Let's just add 3 more orders of parameters. Turns out, it's not that simple. I remember back in my school days, I had this cool graphics card, though it was outperformed by a much smaller chip inside the first iPad. However, it introduced me to Nvidia. For the longest time, Nvidia was known primarily for its gaming graphics cards. The company's steady growth was disrupted in 2017 and 2018 when gamers suddenly needed to upgrade their PCs. Wait, gamers? Yeah, at that time the cryptocurrency market was experiencing its first major bull run, and it turned out the graphics cards were excellent for mining Ethereum. After a brief lull, the mining frenzy continued into 2021, reaching new to the moons in crypto and ending with another bloodbath. But more importantly, around this time, Nvidia began to make significant profits in a new market, computing. The company made its second major business shift, from gaming cards to mining cards, and now all of that seems trivial compared to the market for computing power. Their revenue structure is crazy. Just look at it. Computing now accounts for nearly 80% of their income. So, why is this computing important at all? Why indeed? It's essential for everything related to AI, generating images, providing responses, playing Dota, and targeting enemy drones. All these tasks require computational power to see, process, and react. A crucial aspect is training neural networks. Remember we talked about models having billions of parameters? Well, after creating a model, these parameters need to be trained. Essentially, researchers work to make billions of parameters and neurons respond appropriately to inputs, that is, queries, and produce accurate outputs, answers, so users don't get pizza recommendations with nails or autonomous drones don't crash into people. Training is a costly process, and just like with cryptocurrency mining, it depends on hardware suppliers. To give you an idea of the scale, training a model with 7 billion parameters using 8 not-so-new Nvidia processors costs about $25,000 and takes approximately 1,500 hours, or 2 months of continuous operation. However, if you perform the same training on more modern equipment, the training time is cut in half and the overall cost ends up being lower. And that's just for 7 billion parameters. 1 month is 7 billion parameters. For comparison, GPT-3 has 175 billion parameters. So, does that mean it would take 25 months or 2 years just to train a model like GPT-3? First off, it's important to note that after training the model, the results might disappoint and the whole thing could end up being scrapped. Imagine spending 2 years and $500,000 on a simple test that, at best, could only compete with GPT-3.
This is my city.
In reality, the time required is much shorter and the costs are much higher. This is where the magic happens. Individual processes are linked together, and then all of this can be combined again into a massive cluster. These clusters can even scale up to a total of 1,000 processors, turning into a supercomputer with a super price tag. The latest B200 processor alone costs $30,000. For context, to estimate the cost of a supercomputer, multiply this by 1,000. And here's the kicker, only one company designs and sells all this power. Nvidia. Right now, Nvidia is in competition with Apple for the title of the world's most valuable company. To be honest, until I wrote this script, I thought it was just another bubble, as it's valued at 70 times its annual profits. 70 years of profits are needed to justify its current valuation. Overall, even after writing this script, I still think the valuation is inflated, though it's still not as extreme as the king of bubbles, Tesla, which was worth 1,000 times its profits. Nvidia's bubble is explained by its monopoly in the computing market, with Microsoft, Amazon, Apple, and Meta all relying on it. Nvidia is the one that determines when significant advancements in models like ChatGPT will occur. In 2023, John's dog fell seriously ill. The vet diagnosed it with babesiosis and prescribed the appropriate treatment. However, the dog only got worse. A blood test revealed more severe anemia than before. The vet was at a loss and suggested waiting it out. But John couldn't just sit idly by. He turned to ChatGPT and uploaded the test results. The model suggested several possible diagnoses, including babesiosis. John then added some context. After treating the babesiosis, some symptoms had improved while others worsened. He shared the second blood test results. The model continued analyzing and suggested that there might be multiple issues at play. If John was asking, it likely meant that the dog had both babesiosis and another infection. After providing one more test, ChatGPT hypothesized that the most likely diagnosis was immune-mediated hemolytic anemia. Armed with this new information, John consulted a second vet who agreed with the assessment. The dog was treated successfully, and there was a happy ending. What's the takeaway from this story? That you should self-diagnose using ChatGPT? Absolutely not. The researcher channel strongly advises against self-diagnosis on the internet, whether through forums, Google, or LLMs. The risks are real. You could end up hurting yourself, losing your girlfriend, and becoming the butt of jokes among your friends. Don't be a fool. The real lesson here is that large language models, aka LLMs, can be a valuable tool for solving everyday and professional tasks. For example, they can help doctors with diagnoses, assist developers with code, or support marketers in writing copy. Generative AI, responsible for creating content like text, graphics, or audio,
With the lights out, less dangerous. Here we are now. Entertain us. I feel stupid.
is undergoing a tremendous boom, driving AI usage up to 72% among surveyed companies. Interestingly, while many once thought AI would replace factory workers, leaving the intellectual elite safe, the reality has turned out quite differently. The more a profession is tied to the physical world, the harder it is to replace humans with robots. So right now, the most notable applications of generative AI are in high-value intellectual fields. The biggest impacts are seen in marketing, product development, and IT. On the other hand, if your job involves manual labor like mining or baking, you're safe from automation, for now, because it's just too expensive to replace you with robots. But call center employees, they're prime candidates. Last year, the US Bureau of Labor Statistics conducted a study in a Fortune 500 company to assess the impact of LLM integration on 5,000 employees and 3 million chat histories. Here's the productivity level of those who worked the old-fashioned way, and here's the productivity of those who had AI assistants. Naturally, the average handling time decreased, and the number of processed requests increased. What's interesting is how AI affects employees at different levels. The biggest productivity boost was seen in those who had just started the job, but as employees gained more experience, the effectiveness of this high-tech tool diminished. In other words, pairing a rookie with AI can bring them up to the level of a mid-tier specialist, or even more broadly, AI has the potential to raise the average competence level across the board. The hype around artificial intelligence isn't just about increased productivity or comparisons to the invention of the steam engine, electricity, or the internet. People are starting to wonder if this magical box might reveal the secrets of the universe that are beyond human comprehension. And to make this box truly magical, developers are putting a lot of effort into expanding the context window. For us, maintaining and analyzing context happens almost naturally. We don't just buy random items at the grocery store, we wouldn't wear a bikini to work. When we see video clips embedded within a larger video, we understand their relevance, even though the clips themselves might not make sense out of context. Even memes act as providers of context. In LLMs, the context window is what allows the system to retain previous information and generate more coherent and meaningful responses. So there was a test to see how well the Claude 3 Opus model could handle context. The task was to find a needle in a haystack. The model was fed 700 pages of random documents on startups, programming, and job hunting. This was the haystack. Hidden among them were a few sentences about pizza, the needle. When asked for the best pizza recipe, the model responded that
The most delicious pizza topping combination is figs, prosciutto, and goat cheese, as determined by the International Pizza Connoisseurs Association.
So, yes, the LLM found the needle, but what surprised everyone was what it said next.
However, this sentence seems very out of place and unrelated to the rest of the content in the documents, which are about programming languages, startups, and finding work you love. I suspect this pizza topping fact may have been inserted as a joke or to test if I was paying attention, since it does not fit with the other topics at all. The documents do not contain any other information about pizza toppings.
It realized it was being tested. With the expectation that AI could find similar needles in other areas, such as cancer treatment, OpenAI has partnered with a medtech company specializing in oncology. They aim to create an app based on ChatGPT that can extract information from various document formats like PDFs and clinical notes, compile it into an understandable format, align it with clinical knowledge, and propose personalized treatment plans. The medtech company is also partnering with the American Cancer Society, so after a few years of sandbox testing, this approach could very well be rolled out across the entire US healthcare system. It's becoming clear why the EU, the US, and China are raising concerns about technological sovereignty in AI. Why a former NSA head and commander of US Cyber Command recently joined the board of OpenAI. Why the French company Mistral quickly secured funding just by stating that the EU needs to own its own open-source ChatGPT and gain the support of a former minister. Why China is so eager to acquire the world's top electronics foundry, which produces 60% of all chips globally. Why, after training these models, we're likely to see mutual bans on exports. LLMs, like ChatGPT, are now viewed as tools as powerful and influential as unmanned drones. Current versions can already simulate scenarios, like creating a new epidemic. Conspiracy theorists step away from the screen. I once asked ChatGPT to imagine a scenario where pharmaceutical companies took over the world. Then I asked how they would convince society of a dangerous virus that only a vaccine could cure. On screen now, you'll see a series of screenshots. You can pause to study them in detail. Let me be clear, I'm not suggesting that COVID-19 was fabricated, but rather demonstrating the kinds of AI capabilities that concern world leaders, especially if this technology is controlled by a single country with closed source code where we can't see inside the black box and don't know if the outputs are biased based on nationality or profession. In such a case, scandals like Cambridge Analytica or accusations of bias in Google's search engine might seem trivial. Come on, now you're just exaggerating. Look at McDonald's. Didn't they drop their AI investments because it was putting bacon in ice cream?
You added bacon to my ice cream. I don't want bacon. I don't want...
Thank you.
I don't want 3 ice cream cones. I only want 2.
Well. Who could have predicted that if you try to use AI as a magic wand for everything, it wouldn't always work out? This case only shows that IBM's particular AI solution wasn't effective in that specific context. Either the magic was off, or the area of application was wrong. But at the same time, this story reflects the current state of all the hustle with AI. People are still figuring out how to implement this trendy tool.
And we were very focused on building the technology and doing research. And we thought, here is this amazing model. Commercial partners take it and go build amazing products on top of it. And then we found out that that's actually very hard.
That led you to build a chatbot because you just wanted it. Yeah.
Yes, because we were trying to figure out, okay, why is it so hard for these really amazing, successful companies to actually turn this technology into a helpful product?
That's what people are trying to do now. While McDonald's might have backed out of IBM's solution, that doesn't mean they won't find another provider. Or maybe they'll find another use for AI, like in employee training, a direction that IKEA is also exploring. Yum Brands, the parent company of KFC, Pizza Hut and others, is trying to apply AI to manage restaurants and warehouses. We've already seen that the right kind of AI magic can significantly boost the efficiency of an average customer service rep. Other practical applications are still being explored. Right now, accurately assessing the impact of AI implementation is nearly impossible. On one hand, I could say, look, Google is laying off 12,000 employees, Citigroup is cutting 20,000, Microsoft is letting go nearly 2,000, Unity is slashing 1/4 of its workforce, and UPS is cutting a record 14% of its managers. Cisco, Expedia, Sony, and many others are downsizing as well. And all of this is supposedly due to artificial intelligence. The CEO of UPS even explicitly said that job cuts are due to the success of optimizing sales operations. But using AI as a cover is a convenient way to justify layoffs, as if it's not the company's financial performance or specific projects that are the issue, but rather that they're just so smart and trendy, adopting AI and riding the hype. Though in Google's case, they certainly don't have financial issues, so it's not as straightforward as it seems. You can look at studies that cite the reasons for layoffs. In 2023, in America, 4,200 people were laid off because of AI. That might seem like a small number, especially compared to other more tangible reasons. But at the same time, it's interesting to see that this reason exists at all and is already more significant than hiring foreign specialists. So things are getting even more complicated.
I mean, the truth is that we don't really understand the impact that AI is going to have on jobs yet.
Forget the smart studies for a moment. Look at our channel. We actively use Midjourney, DALL-E, and ChatGPT, and some of our thumbnails, we wouldn't have been able to make them without generative AI. So, are humans about to be replaced? Not entirely. Yes, optimizing large workforces is likely. In our case, we simply won't work with a designer who doesn't use neural networks as a tool. Yes, it's hard to adjust to this new reality. Moreover, it's hard to prompt. I did try, and it just gave me some garbage. I stumbled upon a meme about this. If you didn't get it, I asked an LLM to explain it for you. You can pause and read it. Most likely, the reality of AI will be much less dramatic than the apocalyptic predictions as it usually is. But it's hard to argue that humanity now has a powerful tool for everyday and professional tasks, one that we haven't fully unlocked or understood. The beauty here is that the final outcome depends on you. The next time the magic box gives you a subpar result, will you blame the tool itself, or will you learn how to prompt better to change the outcome? The choice is yours. And we thank everyone who supports our neural network, especially the super intellects on Patreon. Share this video with your friends, hit the like button, and write your comments for support. And I'm the researcher.